as that great nation that she was promised to be. Look at verse 1. The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. These verses describe the outcome of God's purpose with Israel. The last days were not an issue at the time Isaiah prophesied. They are dawning at the time that Jesus is on the earth, where he is preaching that the kingdom is at hand, and they extend into the first chapters of the book of Acts. In Acts chapter 2, Peter quotes Joel regarding things that will take place in the last days. And Peter says that what was happening there was what was spoken of by the prophet Joel. Those last days were interrupted by the unforeseen dispensation of Gentile grace, which we are living in today. When this age is over, God will resume his program with Israel, and the last days will be an issue once again. Now, Israel's last days are actually divided into two parts: the day of the Lord's purging and avenging wrath, and the day of the Lord's power and great glory with the establishment of the kingdom. There is a time schedule given to the nations so that they can place the expressions that are given to them: last days, latter days, many days, etc. Once they know when these occur on the timeline, then they can know exactly where they are. The dominion that Satan received at Adam's fall will be stripped away from him and given to the nation of God's own choosing. Isaiah chapter 2 verse 2 says that all nations shall flow unto it. Now, mountains are often used to represent kingdoms, and this mountain that is God's government will be exalted above every other government. It will have ascendancy over all others. When this happens, instead of following Satan's course of the world, the nations will change and follow God's course. Notice verse 3. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. Do you see the change in what the nations of the world will be following? No longer are the nations following after Satan's ways, but their desire will be after God's ways, to walk in God's paths. And how will they know what pleases God? How will they know what to do in order to walk in his paths? They will be taught by the members of the nation how to walk in God's ways. The law will be carried forth by the nation who will minister it to the rest of the world. When the kingdom is here, the nation will enjoy times of refreshing in the presence of their God in the land, which will be restored to as it was in the Garden of Eden. Ezekiel chapter 36 verse 33. Thus saith the Lord God, in that day that I shall have cleansed you from all your iniquities, I will also cause you to dwell in the cities, and the wastes shall be builded. And they shall say, This land was desolate, is become like a Garden of Eden, and the waste and desolate and ruined cities are become fenced and are inhabited. Israel will not just lay around in that land. However, they have a job to do. They are to carry the law and administer God's righteous rule to the rest of the world. The land is their place of rest and recuperation from their labors. This is just the way it was to have been with Adam, as the garden was to be a place of rest and comfort between the times of subduing and having dominion over the rest of the earth. With the establishment of God's kingdom on this earth and God having his house there in the land of Israel, the blessing of the world takes place, and the world is repossessed to God through Israel. God will repossess the land of Israel and plant his people in that land. They will, as that holy nation and kingdom of priests, carry the word of the Lord to the rest of the nations. Through their activity, the nations of the world will be reconciled to God. Now, let's look at another passage that describes the wondrousness of the day when the kingdom is established. We turn to Isaiah chapter 25, where we see a wonderful feast that is set up by the Lord of hosts. Read about the feast, then watch what follows. Here we go. Isaiah 25 verse 6. And in this mountain shall the Lord of hosts make unto all people a feast of fat things, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of wines on the lees well refined. And he will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. Isn't that powerful? Verse 7 says that at that time God will destroy a covering that has been cast over all people, and he will destroy the veil that is over all nations. Excuse me. This is a reference to what we have called Satan's plan of evil. That covering and veil was cast over the people and nations in Genesis chapter 4 through chapter 11. Satan's course of this world was something that Satan established to such a degree that it was an ongoing enterprise. In a sense, it was like a perpetual motion machine, in that once it got going, it continued on its own. Every once in a while, Satan would intervene and rev things up, but it was carrying on under its own power. After the events of Genesis chapter 4 through Genesis chapter 11, and under the coverings of the plan of evil, the nations continued to be infected and followed that same course that was charted long ago. This plan of evil was just like Isaiah said. It was a covering that was cast over all people, and it was like a veil that was spread over all nations. A covering and a veil have some things in common, in that they cover and are spread out. They create a darkness. They block the ability to see what is beyond them, and this is just what Satan was doing. The covering kept them from looking above, and the veil kept them from seeing around them. Satan was darkening their understanding. I suppose you could say that Satan's strategy was to keep the world in the dark with regard to the truth. Even Israel, during their history, was under that covering and darkened by that veil. But at the establishment of the kingdom, all that is going to be destroyed. The light of God's ways and path will go out to the nations to remove the veil and rip away the covering. And for the first time, the nations will see what they had actually been involved in. There are marvelous things written about this in Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And while we cannot step aside to observe the details, you should at least be aware that a day is coming when God will destroy Satan's plan of evil that blinded the nations. In our next session, we will come back and we will turn to Zechariah chapter 14. And we will look at the things concerning the day of the Lord that are spoken of, as God pours out his wrath upon the nations which have been used by Satan's policy of evil. Until then, this is Pastor Sonny saying God bless you and have a wonderful day. If you have questions, please write me at mychurch@rocketmail.com. That's mychurch@rocketmail.com.